You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Hi everyone, this is your host, Daniel Lee here. And I wanted to give you some background on the actual podcast. So, I really like asking people what they do, and I've had jobs as a public accountant, a management consultant, and lately as a public equities investor. And in getting these roles, I had to speak to a lot of people who were already doing what I wanted to do. And it turned out that what the media and industry stereotypes say about the role is not at all accurate to what you actually do. And this was not to mention that most assumptions people said about a certain individual's journey into that career field was also wrong. This was because it's never as linear as people think it is. It's never as simple as you do A, then you go to B, and then you will get to do C. It's actually much more complicated than that, and that's what I realized after having spoken to over 80 different people to learn about what they did. And something I found out was that a lot of my friends had not learned this yet. Some eventually would because they have already started reaching out to people to actually learn about what they did. But I also knew that many wouldn't because cold calling people really frightened them, and that's completely understandable. It still scares me too. But I also am always extremely curious about what other people do, and I love hearing about their stories. So I figured maybe I can help them out with this podcast and just document what I would normally be talking about with other people. And so that's what this podcast is about. It's me finding people with career journeys that I find interesting, and or they have roles that I would like to learn more about. And so I really do hope that I can add value to you in that sense as I go about selfishly using this podcast to learn more about other people and fulfill my own curiosity. Today's guest is Chris Cornell. Chris is a partner at KPMG's audit practice within their financial institutions group, and Chris has been with KPMG for about, I think, 16 years, and he is also the human resources partner, so he's in charge of the whole people landscape. And this conversation I felt was interesting because I find that not a lot of people actually know what partners in the Big Four environment do. And I mean not a lot of people as in people that actually work in the Big Four accounting firms. When you are in those bottom levels, many people don't know what the partners actually do. But I think it is important to know what your boss actually does, because if you don't want to be like what your boss is, then you would have to look at doing something else, because there's definitely a misalignment there. And Chris's story is definitely a fun overview of what it is like to be a more people-focused partner, someone who is an extrovert. And he actually did not start out at KPMG, and so that's also a fun twist. And we even try to dive into a bit of the equity structure that I was very curious about, because people always talk about partners being extremely well off once you become a partner, but I wanted to shed some light on that, and so we try to explore that a little as well as just the pain points and the actual limitations, as well as benefits that you get as being a partner of a major conglomerate.
All right, welcome everyone. Today I'm joined by Mr. Chris Cornell. He's the partner at KPMG's Financial Institutions Audit Practice. Chris and I, we go way back. He was my former boss about 5 years ago, back in my earlier audit days. And Chris is your partner here. It's been about 15, 16 years at the
same
firm.
Yeah.
And so, is this something you expected, man? That's like your first question.
I think you asked me that 5-6 years ago, probably. I don't think anyone can honestly say that when they start out at the firm that it's something that you expect to eventually make partner. I think you have those some goals in mind longer term, and you kind of let it play out and see how how partners react and how your career is taking you. But for me, when I started out, my first goal was just to qualify, right? At that time was to pass the UFE, now obviously the CFE process, and get my designation, and then kind of see where that takes you. But once you do that, then you start to see the opportunities that getting your CPA presents you, and taking advantage of those opportunities. So for me, it was going to the UK and working on a secondment to our office in London in the UK. Great experience. And then after doing that, I came back, and you make manager, you make senior manager, and you recognize how much you enjoy working with your clients. You recognize how much you enjoy working with your teams and with your people, and the opportunities that you have almost to have a career within a career at the firm. And to elaborate on that, I think from an audit perspective, I never thought that eventually I'd be kind of the HR partner for the audit practice, and seeing how that develops, and getting the opportunity to work with outstanding clients certainly provides you with a perspective that what we're doing is helpful to them. It's great to be a part of, and it just kind of evolves from there.
And I think if we were to take a step back, thinking about the Chris of the younger years, I believe you went to University of
Laurier.
Laurier. So that's in Waterloo. Did you grow up around that area?
I grew up on a farm just outside of Chatham, Ontario. Yeah, so a little town called Thamesville. And so my parents were always pushing my brother and I to go to university, and so that it was always so you don't have to be on the farm, right? And you look back on it now, and you really appreciate the support that they gave to my brother and I as you grow up. And in high school, one of the classes that I really liked was accounting. I liked all my business classes, law classes, and so when I was looking at what university to go to, was trying to decide Western Queens or Laurier, and I went to a smaller high school, given kind of the rural upbringing that I had, and so Laurier was a smaller school at that time and a smaller business program, and so that really appealed to me, and it was far enough from home that you didn't have to stay at home, but close enough that you could get back in a reasonable time frame. So that was really, and my career at, or my time at Laurier was awesome. I was in the co-op program there. I actually didn't do my co-op terms at KPMG. I did them at smaller firms in Kitchener, in Chatham, and then did a term actually at Sleeman Brewery in their accounting and finance department there, which was a really cool experience. Have to say that one of the better parts of that was the pay, and every time you got your paycheck, you also got a case of beer. So I made friends pretty quickly amongst the the people in my program, because they knew I worked at Sleeman. So that was a great experience. And then going through grad recruiting in fourth year, I was fortunate enough to to interview with, at that time, all the big 5 firms. Anderson was still around at that time as well.
Right.
And honestly, I narrowed it down to PwC and KPMG, and ultimately decided to join KPMG. Had friends over here. I really liked the environment, and never haven't looked back since. So.
You grew up in a small town, went to university that had a more small field, went to smaller companies, and now you just stayed at a major conglomerate accounting firm for well past a decade. What changed? Why didn't you ever have an inkling to go back to that small environment that always drew you?
So I was extremely fortunate working in those smaller firms, I learned a ton.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you do everything from owner managed business, tax returns. You're almost like their personal advisor in that role, even as a you know, a co-op student or just a junior staff accountant. Right. Those businesses and those managers are always looking for people as a sounding board to talk about their business and how does this make sense. And I think that part of that sticks with you as you continue to, you know, go to whether it's a larger firm and get the opportunities here. And that's something that all through my career I've tried to be cognizant of and remember that, you know, at the end of the day when you're talking with your clients it's important what they're doing, and it could be whether it's, you know, the person doing accounts payable or the CFO, right? And it's bringing that good listening ear to what we do and making sure that you're really understanding what their issues are and helping them through those issues. So it, you know, as you say, okay, well, you know, you're KPMG, Big Four, all that stuff, but at the end of the day, our clients don't necessarily care where you work. They want to know that professional service that you're going to get and that you're going to be able to help them solve their problem. And so that's what I've tried to bring, no matter where I've been at. So,
right.
Yeah.
And you talked about how, you know, you didn't foresee becoming a partner. Obviously, when you join, I would say some people join and they say, all right, I'm going to stay till I get partner. Yeah. That's the track. But I would say most tend to just come in and they just do it kind of day by day and see how it goes. Did you have a kind of decision-making process for you where you had like benchmarks, or you had kind of evaluating process personally that you used?
For sure. I think once I came back from secondment in the UK, every year I tried to, you know, go through a process of, you know, benchmarking where I was at with my career, looking around at my peers and seeing what they were potentially doing in industry. How did my roles and responsibilities compare to, you know, potentially what they were getting in their roles, and what were the opportunities that I was getting within the firm. And I was fortunate in terms of, you know, I think a lot of what happens to you is timing. If you decide to stay in a Big Four firm, so it depends on what industry you're in, what the timing is in terms of you know, partners, whether there's retirements or changes within the firm. But another large part of it is the opportunities that you make for yourself, right? And so, you know, developing relationships with your teams and with clients and future clients, and you know, showing that you have the ability to, you know, to drive business, to bring in business, while at the same time, you know, doing your day-to-day responsibilities. And at the end of the day, for me, I really enjoyed the aspect of meeting new people, seeing what they were doing and trying to help them as part of their business. And you know, there's all these different, whether it's dials or metrics or everything that everyone, you know, is assessed on within the firms. And it's pretty consistent, I think, across all of the firms, right? But people who like to, I'll say, play in the client and market space, you know, that's where you get your opportunities to kind of showcase your skills outside of a normal audit process. Right. And having that, having a bit of that freedom and being afforded that freedom to do that really allowed me to develop those skills and to, you know, knock on wood, continue to develop new business. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, speaking from my experience, like when I was a staff accountant, and I think
a very good one.
Yeah, thank you. Getting a little.
When are you coming back? No.
It's always good to know I have that door.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so like when you're a junior and you're always like looking up, it somewhat seems quite linear, and I know there's definitely an illusion to that, but I think people in the industry would know that, like you're a staff for a couple of years and you become a senior accountant, a couple of years and manager, and it seems quite linear in terms of you kind of expect there's some kind of promotion climbing up the ladder. But I would guess that it gets quite gray, I think, after a certain point where it's kind of there are no more answers or no like precedents to really rely on. So did you have that kind of experience when you were embarking on your own journey?
Yeah, for sure. I think if you talk to partners probably in any firm, that they always feel like they didn't make partner quick enough, right? You know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, you feel like your individual case, you're ready, right? You know, I'm ready to take on that responsibility, and I think that's probably consistent if you talk to the partners at this firm or any other. And part of that is, like I said, timing, but the other part of it too is, just the economic environment, everything around that. So I think that's one of the great things is that, you have that confidence and, when I'm ready to move forward and ready to go to that next step. But at the same time, there's the influence of a number of factors that go into that. So I think you're bang on, right? It does feel quite linear up until you make manager, right? Each year you're progressing on a normal kind of fashion, and we do have people that really maybe jump a level or get promoted early into manager because they've demonstrated outstanding skills, and that happens, and those people tend to go on and do amazing things in their career, either staying at KPMG or going outside afterwards. Once you make senior manager, that you mentioned the gray area, it does start to become a little bit more gray. And I think as a profession and as the firms in general, we probably struggle with providing clarity once you get to that level. Is what are the behaviors that you're going to need to exhibit in order to make partner, and how quickly can you get there? And we've tried to become much more transparent as part of that process. And I think people do have a lot more information now than they would have even 5 years ago about what that partner process is like. At the same time, I think that there are factors that still are outside of, I'll say, the existing partners, in terms of to try and, provide ultimate clarity, because you really don't know how the economy is going to perform year to year. You don't know what are going to be, you can try and guess and place your bets in terms of what are going to be the hot areas for the economy, what are going to be the industries where you're going to need to develop, new partners. But I haven't been a partner that long in things like blockchain and crypto. Crypto assets weren't around, 5, 6, 7 years ago, or they certainly weren't on our radar. So, you're not going to know how you're going to have to adapt during that time frame. So,
that's actually fascinating. I didn't think about it in that perspective. I think it's something you miss when you're a junior, but I think as you get to your level as a partner, now you're a business owner, and the way you'd have to think about it is different. So, what's the process like in terms of then, like, do you guys all get together and say, we're gonna decide to bring on partners in this business area to grow that? Is it like allocation of like sales personnel?
So I'll speak for our, I'm obviously more familiar with the KPMG model, but certainly you want to look by sector. You want to look by service line, and you want and as part of that process, you want to make sure that the individuals that you're putting forward have a strong track record of growth in those areas, right? And so there's a number of different factors that all go into it. But the most important thing, and the thing that I always say to our senior managers when they're nearing that time when they think they're ready, is you can control your individual readiness. So doing all the things to be able to show that you're ready to make partner. You can't control whether or not your industry is hot right now. You can't control the growth trajectory, and if you look at, let's say, the oil and gas industry in Canada over the last, the cyclical nature of that. And so you can't control those things, but if you can control your individual case, your readiness, all of those things, then good things will happen. In our practice, we had a number of senior banking partners who've retired over the last 5 years. And when I started out my career, I obviously had no idea in terms of what that partnership demographic looked like and the timeline for those partners. And so, certainly I was fortunate in terms of some of the timing of those retirements and being able to, and to demonstrate the capability to fill the shoes of, not necessarily fill the shoes, but try to fill the shoes of some of those senior partners. But when you're starting out your career, you can't think that way. There's so many different, influences, and there's so many different things that can happen that you just have to kind of, own what you're doing and control that and trust that the process will work. So,
And I think obviously, especially since you've gone through it, hindsight's always 20/20, and I'm sure some of your mentees might even say, like, of course you can say trust the process. It happened to you.
Of course,
But for you, when you were in your journey, what would you say was the largest obstacle for you that you felt you had to overcome?
It's a good question. I think there's probably two things. So the first one is the demonstration of that individual case. Mm-hmm. And part of that is taking yourself sometimes out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And, just my upbringing, right? Growing up on a farm, smaller town, I like to think that I'm a relatively humble person. Mm. And so not wanting to kind of toot your own horn a little bit, right? And saying, these are the things that I'm doing. It really does take you out of that element a little bit. And you have to kind of showcase your abilities a little more and say, I've developed these relationships. Working with my team, we've been able to do this. And so that was something that I had a senior partner tell me, he'd say, I know what you're doing, but other people don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to kind of demonstrate that and talk about it a little bit more, because mm-hmm. that's part of the process. And some people really like that self-promotion aspect of things. That was difficult for me. And so and so I had to take myself a little bit out of my comfort zone in that area. Mm. The second thing is that it's a high bar, right? To become a partner in one of the big four mm-hmm. firms. You're working with, and I'm always amazed at the skills, the intellect, and just in general, I learn so much stuff every day from my colleagues who are, partners at these firms. And so it's a competitive process. Mm-hmm. And so that's a challenge in and of itself. And so, for people who are fortunate enough to make it to partner in one of those firms, it's a great accomplishment. Mm-hmm. Because they've had to, spend a lot of time working through different economic cycles, working with a challenging environment. You've got four, and then the big four, and then all the other large consulting firms out there that are competing for business with clients, and our clients have the ability to kind of go wherever they'd like, mm-hmm. right? And so to establish that trust and to earn that trust and to to be able to make it as a partner, it's certainly an accomplishment. And I tell our new partners that every year is that they should be extremely proud of what they've done, because it's a long haul to get there, and it's worth it. At the same time, it is a significant investment in your time, your family's time, and some of the sacrifices that you have to make to get to that level. So.
Mm. On the note of sacrifices, would you say there's like a specific thing that you remember you had to sacrifice, or?
I guarantee that probably every partner has war stories of working till late nights and things like that, right? Yeah. But I don't think that's any different than any other industry or career, or C-level executive, or entrepreneur, right? So working hard's a given. I think everybody expects that, and that's going to happen. So I don't think that I'm not going to say that there's things in a professional services firm that are different in terms of what you give up than in any other process, because I think people always have to make trade-offs, right, mm-hmm. in terms of their career, and what they want to do from whether it's family, it's other activities, social activities, things like that. I think mm-hmm. The people who do give up a lot are whether it's your significant other or your family members, who understand that there's going to be times when you have the opportunity to spend more time with them, and maybe because of the financial situation that you're in, have some fantastic holidays or things like that, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a trade-off to that in terms of being available essentially 24/7, right? Mm-hmm. in this role, and you say that and you think, that's a significant commitment, but at the same time, when you have established that trust with your clients, then they understand that there are times when you are available and when you're not, right? And so setting some, whether it's boundaries or just when I'm not available for the next couple hours or whatever, that tends to work well, and certainly nothing that's not manageable.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to transition on to kind of understanding more mm-hmm. of what you actually do on a daily basis, because I would say I think you're relatively good. You were relatively good at this in terms of kind of showing up more into the audit rooms when we were, at war. But I would say that most of the times, most people have no idea what a partner actually does throughout their day. It's kind of more, we just know you make a lot of money, you own part of the firm, and kind of come in at the last minute, sign off, and it's kind of, we never see you again. So
that's the perception, right?
That's the perception. Yeah, I don't know if it's changed that much since 5 years ago, but I'm bound to say that there's still a bit of that going on. Mm-hmm. And so, I think if we were to look at it from actually the most kind of baseline perspective, can you take me through what your day looked like yesterday? Sure. So kind of beginning from what time did you get into the office to when your first meeting was? What you typically do in the mornings?
Sure. So it depends in terms of what time I get into the office. So some days I'm in between 7:30. Other days 8:30, 9, and that really depends on whether I have meetings coming up, a breakfast meeting, or if I can get the opportunity to steal a little time with my kids and take them to school. Right. So I'd say every day for me a starting time is different. I know some people like to get in at the same time every day, but and since I have 2 boys now that are 9 and 5, I try and kind of steal a little bit of time in the mornings with them. I used to be in 7:30 was my kind of thing before we had kids, but that's changed a little bit now. But it's interesting. Every day I kind of and today's a bad example because I don't have my itinerary, kind of my calendar all written out, but I try to kind of think about, okay, what are the key things that I'm going to have to do today, whether it's file review, what clients do I want to talk to either on site or over the phone, and then what do we have going on as kind of our HR partner for audit as well. There's always kind of things that maybe are going to pop up, whether it's an interview or something like that that I get the opportunity to participate in. So every day is different, which is really one of the things that I really like about the job. I have a reasonably good idea of what my deadlines are going to be and what I'm going to try and work on from, I'll say, client review and things of that nature. But I don't know what client's going to call me that day and say, hey, we've got an offering coming up. This is what we're thinking of doing. Can you kind of help us with this? You never know whether there's going to be a potential accounting issue that comes up on your client, and it's going to kind of have to, okay, let's drop this for a second and move forward. And to be frank, you never know if there's going to be an issue, whether someone's going to come in and say, you know what, I'm thinking about making a career change, can we talk about it? Right? And those things are priority number one, right? So you want to make sure that our clients, if they have questions, that those are addressed on a timely basis. And at the same time, for our people, if they have questions about, okay, I don't want to be on this assignment, or I'm thinking about a potential career change, can we talk about it? Those things have to happen right away. And so for me, that's the part where I don't know whether that's going to come, today or tomorrow. So you have to kind of leave a little bit of buffer in there and kind of, make sure that you're focused on that as well. I think the nice thing for me is we have a great team around on a lot of our engagements. So whether our managers, our senior managers, and our staff, they relish the opportunities to kind of solve some of those problems from a client perspective. And you want to give our team, or I want to give our teams the opportunity to be able to, to do that solutioning and work through it with the client. And so that's great, and giving people the opportunity to take on as much as they can, and then kind of bouncing it off me at the end, because ultimately the buck stops with me, my clients. And so that's an interesting aspect of it, and you kind of know which of your managers and senior managers are looking for those opportunities, and you can trust them to be able to do that. And those that potentially may need a little bit more guidance, maybe they're new on the client, or maybe are not as experienced in solving those issues. So that's great. And so I'm very fortunate to have a fantastic team that I get to work with every day, and that's part of what makes the job exciting as well.
And so then, if I were to ask you to compartmentalize the kind of activities you did, so the example I could give is when I was a staff accountant, the way I think my day, if I allocated percentage-wise by time, it would have been about 50-60% taking time reading audit notes just in front of my computer, and then about, I'd say 30% in meetings, whether it's clients or just team meetings, and then the other, it's just sometimes running around, doing inventory counts or
you forgot filling out the menus and everything like that you used to do to make sure we were eating healthy in the audit room.
Right? That's true. So,
was that 3%?
That's probably it. Yeah, like for the audience that don't know, because of my infatuation of healthy eating, I made sure that everyone that bought snacks with the audit budget had, I think the limit was at least 25%, 50%.
25% of
20% had to be healthy, because everyone. I think the first year I was just appalled by how it was just all sweets and.
You had to be Daniel certified in order to get the list.
No, but after everyone complained in the beginning, and then after the audit, everyone said, no, that was a very good choice, and they felt better.
They felt better about, that's for sure. That's for sure. I think at least 50% of my time is spent talking to clients.
Yeah.
And you know what? It should be more.
Yeah.
Right. I think if you talk to some other partners, maybe it's a little bit more because of some of my HR responsibilities. There's a little bit more time focused internal, right? Excuse me. And so, I'd say 50 to 60% of my time is spent on client matters. Probably 30% on I'll say kind of internal focused HR matters, and then the remainder, and I'm sure if you talk to other partners or managers within the firm, is administrative tasks. And when I say that, it's independence matters, client onboarding, that type of stuff, which we have to do. It's important, very important, right, in terms of maintaining our independence and making sure that we've done all the quality checks and the risk checks. But at the same time, that's not a fun part of your job. That's not the part that you're like, oh, good, I get to talk to, no offense to our risk management team, but I get to talk to them today.
Yeah, and I was going to say, just be honest with you, it sucks, doesn't it?
It's, so like I said, that's a necessary part of the job, but at the same time, that's not, one, that's not making us money, right? You want to be out there helping your clients and helping them to do that. And then two, it's something that, like I said, it's necessary. We have to do it, but at the same time, it does divert time from other things that you want to be focusing on in terms of coaching your team, developing them, and mentoring them as well. So.
And in terms of the, speaking with the client aspect, I think the general kind of perception of the business model of audit is that it's relatively more stable than, for example, like consulting, where you have to get a new project every time, whereas audit, you have a multi-year contract and. Generally, clients don't switch auditors that often. So, how does the split work for you in terms of kind of maintaining the relationships compared to seeking out the new business opportunities?
That's a great question. So, I think the way that you have to look at it is that each year that you do an audit, it's the first year of your audit, right? You want it to be, new. You want it to be fresh. You want it to be a situation where you're bringing your best team, best technology. Best approach to the client, and so in that way you're always under kind of proposal mode, and I think I'd be lying to say that always happens, right? Certainly you get used to certain engagements, you get used to certain familiar with certain teams or certain staff, and therefore they come to expect a certain level from the audit, and they expect certain procedures. And if you do try to change them, then they're, well, why are we doing that? We didn't do that last year, right? And so a lot of that's transparency and communication about what we're trying to do, trying to be more efficient, trying to bring more technology to the audits, and really trying to, whether it's get more coverage, do a different test, all of those types of things. So I think, the audits evolving continuously. So I would agree that the perception is that it's more stagnant, more stable than whether it's advisory or tax. But I think at the same time there's lots of opportunities to keep it fresh and exciting. And if you're not doing that on your engagements, then the audit committees that you're presenting to, or the management team that that you're working with as part of that audit are going to challenge you to find out why you're not, because they're hearing things from the other firms about a new technology maybe that they're using, or more coverage that they're getting on a certain area, or the value-added insight that they're getting from their competitors or their auditors. So you have to continue to raise the bar for sure.
And do you find that in the industry, I think something I noticed when I was on my kind of buy-side gig was the companies that I invest in, you'd kind of see the audit fees declining. I think there definitely is some pressure definitely being implied or enforced onto the auditors. How do you feel that kind of hitting the industry relatively hard? How is it changing the industry, and how does it change how you go about strategizing?
Yeah, so I think there's no doubt there's fee pressure. There's lots of competition that's out there. I think there is a lot of value that comes from the audit, and there's a lot of value that can be utilized by both management and the audit committee of getting that sober second thought, insight into some of the control processes that potentially could be done better at clients. And I think as well the value to capital markets in general, right? In terms of what an audit brings to the table. And so as an industry, we certainly have to do a better job of communicating what those values are, and that it's not just here's our opinion, great, thanks for coming out. But it's an ongoing process that happens throughout the year in terms of being able to provide insight to the capital markets, to the audit committee, and ultimately to the board as well. And I think some of the value that you're going to see coming up over the next couple of years is some of the changes to the audit opinions. So in Europe and in the UK, they've gone to a more longer form audit opinion, which includes some of the key risk areas that were identified as part of the audit, the procedures and results of those tests as part of the audit. And so those key metrics are going to be coming to North America as well over the next couple of years. And I think that's great. That transparency is great for the for the capital markets, understanding what the auditors thought were the risk areas, certainly what the audit committee felt was the risk areas as well. And what work was done over those risk areas. Listen, as an audit partner, certainly that it does feel like it's more responsibility on you, to be able to to have your name out there and to have those items out there in terms of key risk areas that you've identified as part of the audit. But at the same time, that doesn't change the fact that we've been doing this for years, right? And identifying those risks and doing high quality work on those areas. And so that communication, that transparency, I think for an industry, and this is my personal opinion, is good, right? We need to make sure that the markets understand exactly what we're bringing to the table, and hopefully that validates the level of fees that we charge.
And so for you personally, in terms of things that motivate you to come in that motivate you to show up every day, is it what is it particularly that motivates you? And additional to that, what do you feel is your unique strength that lets you do the things that make you good at what you do?
I love working with my clients. That's the first thing. Probably my wife says, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like, before I go to bed, kind of thing is, how can I help them the next day, or working through a question or whatever, right? And she'll just say, "Turn it off," kind of thing. But at the end of the day, that's what motivates me to get up, the next morning. You think about what we do and what we bring to the table, and if it was an easy question, then our clients wouldn't need us, right? And so they're looking to us for guidance, they're looking to us for help, and so that's the really neat aspect of it. So the research aspect of it, that talking to your fellow partners or your senior managers and saying, what do you think about this? Is this the best way that we could be doing this? Is there something that we could be doing to help them? And so that's always that's a great motivator. The second one for me is we talked a little bit about the competition and the Big Four and everything, is that it really is a competitive, a fantastic competitive landscape, and the opportunity to go out, source new work, and win on opportunities, whether it's a proposal opportunity, and really demonstrate that you've developed outstanding relationships with those clients or brought something unique to the table that they're going to utilize and really succeed with is something that that motivates me as well. Everybody likes to win, but I think you want to be part of those teams that are really doing outstanding changing work for our clients. And then I'll say the last piece, and I probably should have said this first, but the developing our people, the mentoring our people, working with our teams, right? The relationships that you develop, you and I go back 5-7 years, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hilarious. So I was walking up the street this morning on my way to work, and Josh Kumar, who was a senior associate back in the day, he's now at one of the law firms. He's like, hey, let's do lunch, and Josh has left the firm 8 years ago,
Wow.
and so it's just great to to those relationships that you develop and to see people succeed and we have our alumni event every 2 years that we do from kind of a GTA, overall perspective. And it's getting so big now that we have to rent out arenas, like there's so many people that come back for it. And so that's extremely rewarding, right? To be able to see all the people who really identify during their time at KPMG, the relationships that they developed. Hopefully they had an outstanding experience while they were here, and it certainly feels like they did because they came back and want to reconnect with their peers during that time, and as well with whether it was the partners or the managers that they worked with. So that's outstanding, and part of that is I've been here now 15 years. I don't feel that old, 16 years, I guess. But it keeps you young, right? When you talk to the staff accountants and the senior accountants and kind of what they're seeing, what they're doing, some of the things that they're doing, whether it's on from coming out of university, on a social aspect, what we should be doing, what we should be thinking about as the next wave of kind of business opportunities, all that stuff. It motivates you to get up every morning and come into work for sure. So,
yeah, definitely. And being a partner. You're a part owner of the firm, and as an owner, I think in one aspect I assume that partners would have a lot of kind of full autonomy in terms of what they do.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think when I ask around and you kind of learn more about, there's kind of an internal hierarchy between partners as well. There's like an inside world that only you understand and get to be part of once you get in. And so then for you, if it's like rank kind of your personal autonomy from like 1 to 10, and 1 being good old kind of investment banking style, you kind of show up, FaceTime, and 10 being you don't have to be in the office. It's a results only work environment. You don't have to show up. How would you rank your own? And you can't pick 7.
Can't pick 7?
No.
Okay. So I think it varies on the time of the year in audit.
Okay.
And so at certain points it's a 1 or a 2, right, during the busy season in audit, right? I think for sure, we need our partners, we need everybody out at our clients, right? And you need to be there, and you need to be on top of it, and certainly working to the deadlines that are put in place. I think throughout the year that timeline changes, and maybe in June and July that becomes more of an 8 or 9, right, in terms of let's make sure the people are getting their work done, but at the same time giving them the autonomy to work more from home or whatever, right, in terms of going through that. I think and I think this is changing as a profession as a whole. From my perspective, the most important thing for me is that our clients have fantastic service. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to be out there putting in FaceTime and being in front of them. And because there's lots of times when they've got a day job and that they're working on, and they don't necessarily want to see you, but at the same time they want to know that whether it's their audit's progressing well or whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's an advisory summit. And I don't think this changes depending on function. I think it's the same no matter what. And so if you are moving your work forward and getting your work done, then where you're doing it, to me as a partner, doesn't really matter. But the most important thing is that your team and your client that you're working with, you have a really good communication, really good transparent discussion around this is what we're doing, this is where we're at, this is what's happening, so that when it goes back to kind of it being the first time audit every time, right, you're getting that experience where there's no ambiguity as to where we're at in this process. Everybody knows where we're at. These are what the issues are, and this is how we're working through those issues. And so that to me is of the utmost importance. In terms of autonomy from my partner owner perspective, yes, you do have more autonomy. You have the ability to, you're juggling multiple clients and so you have the ability to kind of work where your clients are, work from the office, work from home, for sure. But with that comes the accountability, right? And so I can't look my fellow partners in the eye knowing that, some of them are working crazy hours and then you're just, slacking off. You know what I mean? Kind of, because we're all owners of this business and we're all trying to do the best to help create a partnership that's going to be better than when we started, right? And so in order to do that, we have to understand what's happening in the economy. We have to understand what's coming next in order to ensure that we remain relevant as we kind of continue on. And so it's a competitive landscape outside of the firm, but it's competitive within the firm as well, right? Because you want to do well, you want to win that next audit, you want to win that next assignment, so that it breeds that culture within the firm as well. Is that, hey, you know what? Naveen's doing really well on this. He's won this assignment. Okay, what's out there that I can go out and try and bring in to help our practice and help our firm as well. And so that breeds a nice competitive spirit within the firm also.
And then I think you bring up a good point that I don't think I ever considered that partners also lost the autonomy in busy season 2, like the January to April period when auditors all stop seeing their friends.
So don't perpetuate those stereotypes, right?
For you, though, I'm sure you had certain thoughts about the partner role, but once you get there, I think reality and expectation always have differences. I think I've witnessed that in every single career that I've taken on. And for you, what stands out as like the 3 big differences that you experienced when you transitioned over?
So the first one for sure is when you're a senior manager, you always think, I'm ready to be a partner now. Yeah. I can make these decisions, and for the most part, you probably can. The routine ones and everything like that. But there's a little bit of a difference when okay, the buck stops with you, and this is the decision that we're making, right? And within KPMG and all the firms certainly have a lot of sounding boards, whether it's your Department of Professional Practice, your risk management team, all those, and you need to talk to them about making those final critical decisions. But at the end of the day, the buck does stop with you, and that's the first change. And you recognize that pretty quickly when you have to make a decision, or you're sitting in a meeting with a client, and as a senior manager, you'll say, "Oh, yeah, just let me bounce this off the partner. I'll get back to you." And then you're sitting there and you're the first year partner, and you're like, I can't bounce this at, there's no one to bounce it off of. I've got to make the decision. So, which is great. The second thing is, we talked about those administrative tasks, right? And as a manager, as a senior manager, you do them, you go through the motions, you know that they're important. But as a partner, it's critical because it is ultimately our ability to do our business, and so that's the second thing that really does jump out at you. And then the third thing, and it depends on what your role is as a partner, but certainly having moved into we call it a senior people leader role in our audit practice, and then now as our HR partner, you recognize how every decision that you make influences whether it's your practice or your group, and you have to think broader than just what is going to happen on a specific engagement or what's going to happen in a specific situation. And does this set precedent for what we're going to do, what we're trying to do over the next year? How can we make this a better process? How can we ensure that we're willing to make an investment now in order to succeed 2 and 3 years down the road? And everybody within the partnership has different trade-offs. Some partners may be nearing retirement and don't want to make that investment right away because it's, well, if we just push that out a couple of years, then my return's going to be higher over the next couple of years, and then I'm retired and moving on, right? So you have to balance that with what's best for the practice longer term, while at the same time recognizing that that some of the partners may not want to make that investment depending on their personal case, right? And so those are things that I really didn't contemplate, as a manager, as a senior manager, that now you have all these, whether, diverse ideas, but at the same time, people that are in their different career, timelines, and looking to maximize their timelines and their returns during those timelines. And so it's a bit of a trade-off, right? And making sure that we're doing the right thing as a practice.
On the concept of return on investment, I think this might be the $1 million question that a lot of the young people actually might be very curious to know. So how does the equity structure look for a partner? Is that something you can share, or is that
so I don't know what it is at any of the other firms, right? And so I think all of the firms are different,
right?
And so I think what I would say is that there is a significant level of investment that you're making as
your
a partner, of your personal, I'll say, returns or wealth, in order to grow the firm at the end of the day. And each firm's in a different spot, and may have different priorities and everything like that. So I won't get into that, but there certainly is skin in the game for sure, and that's a good motivator, right? And you think about if you're an entrepreneur, what you're risking, right? In terms of trying to establish your own company, your own business, versus going to work at a corporation that's already well established. And so that's that risk reward decision that you're making, and I think that that's a healthy part of what we have as a partnership, is that you do have skin in the game in order to make sure that you're exhibiting the behaviors that are going to grow the business. So.
And so then, in terms of how it works, is it like when you get invited to the partnership, it's an invitation to buy an equity stake in the company, right? Yeah.
So each partnership agreement is different. So there's ways that basically what it is it's you can do a percentage of what your expected salary would be that you have to invest into the partnership. And there's other models, right? So some of them may use a unit process. There may be others as well. So it's any time that you have equity at risk, then that's an investment, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess to that point, at the same time, is the partners well, yourself well, so why not invest in yourself and hopefully grow the business, right?
Yeah. So then, if we were to look at an average partner from what you've seen at KPMG, how many years will it take for me to hit my first $1 million in assets?
I'll let you know when I get there.
All right, so we know that.
You know what? It's totally dependent on industry. It's dependent.
Even within audit.
Yeah. So, and I think all the models are different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So to say, I think there's a nice relationship between the risk that you're working on in terms of the clients that you're working on, the level of seniority that you have within the firm, and as well, your contributions to the firm. And I would, I think it's fair to say that looking at those three pieces across all the firms, that you're probably going to see, the higher returns as a result of having those responsibilities. So,
all right. I still don't have a number yet. Can't go without a number.
Yeah, I don't know what to.
About 10?
What I would say. I think that the amount of work that you put into it is commensurate to how you feel your returns are. So.
All right, well, we'll keep it there. And then I guess changing gears a bit. Something I was curious about personally. So, little backstory for the audience who may not know, and also for you as well who might not remember. But
back when I was in my, I guess, final days at KPMG, I came to you and I asked you that I'm considering of leaving. I'm considering a career change, and I asked you to give me your advice as a friend.
Yeah.
And you recommended that you said if you were in my shoes that you would leave and you would try something different.
Yeah.
What kind of thought did you have while you were giving that kind of advice? And I think I was more curious on just because as a partner you would say that the incentive is to keep me, given that I was a good performer longer, but you recommended I leave, and that was the kind of support I needed to make the jump.
So I don't want to get in trouble for saying this from the KPMG perspective, but I think that the best thing that you can do for your people is give them the opportunity to succeed while they're here.
Mm-hmm.
And if they want to try something new, I hope that they want to try something new within the firm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in your case, you had an opportunity outside of the firm to try something new that you were passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone comes to me with that as their opportunity that they're presenting, and they're not running away from something here, but it's something that they want to go to,
mm-hmm.
then I'm always going to recommend that they take that opportunity and try it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you like it, that's great. And you know what? Then 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, when you're successful either as an entrepreneur or successful in that role that you've done, you're going to remember that and say, you know what? I should give Chris a call. When you have a problem, I should give Chris a call and see if KPMG can help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I told you to stay and you stay for another year and you're like, you know what, I've done this, I feel like I'm doing the same thing, or you know what, I wish I would have taken that opportunity, then I'm not being helpful to you as a mentor, as part of your career, and you're going to resent the fact that I told you to stay and to avoid that opportunity. So you have to have low self-interest, right, in
mm-hmm.
this position, and that has to be the same thing with our clients as well, right? Is I'm not going to try and sell you something that you don't need,
mm-hmm.
right? It's I want to listen to what your problems are. Maybe I can help. If I can't help, maybe I know someone within the firm who can. If we can't, then go and get that help from somewhere else. Because
mm-hmm.
if we do a bad job, then we've ruined our credibility, and my relationship with you now is strained.
Mm-hmm.
If I told you, to stay and then put you on 2 jobs that you didn't want to do, and you're feeling frustrated and you're like, well, I thought this was going to be different, or I thought this was going to get better, then you and I don't have a relationship moving forward either, because I haven't helped you. So I think there's times when I do tell people to stay, right? And then because I think genuinely that's the right thing for them, and you can tell that they're not really sold on the opportunity that's presented itself for them to go to,
mm-hmm.
but they just feel like they need something different.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of opportunities to potentially get something different within the firm. But if people come to me and say, you know what, I'm really excited about this opportunity that's come to me, but I love the firm, I love the people, so I'm really torn, then let's sit down and hash out what is the opportunity and does it make sense. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And for you personally, though, then if you kind of try to reminisce back
mm-hmm.
to the Chris Cornell of 20 years old, it's like you're in the third year university.
Yeah.
If he looked at you right now, and what do you think the emotional response would be? Would it be kind of, oh, that's what I expected. I liked accounting in high school. I knew I'd be a partner at a big four firm, or do you think it'd just be surprise, or do you think it'd be disappointment that you were even higher up?
yeah, exactly. I think he would be pleased. I don't think that sitting in Laurier in third year, 830 class, thinking I'm going to be a partner at an accounting firm. I didn't think that. I think I probably thought being in something in finance, at a large organization or something like that. That was kind of what I envisioned. Maybe
mm-hmm.
being, the GM of the Blue Jays or something cool like that, right?
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah, but obviously that didn't play out. But
never too late.
Yeah, exactly. Well, all the GMs now are 30 years old. I'm way too old for that. But I do think that we talked a little bit about, investing in yourself. And, is that you have to have that self-confidence and belief that you're going to succeed in what you do, and then find what is that that niche for you that really does make you happy and that you're passionate about. And that's something that, if I turn that back on you, I can tell when you were here was that you had so many things that you were passionate about and that you were really good at. But at the same time, it's like, audit definitely wasn't the thing that we were most passionate about, right? So you would have succeeded and done really well up to a certain point, and then it becomes monotonous, and then and then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do something else, right? And so now you've had, the last 5 years of amazing experiences, but you can build on kind of that base that you developed while you were here, right? And so for me, I can honestly say I don't think I looked out 20 years at that time and thought about what I was going to do. I think it was probably a little bit smaller chunks. Get my designation, make manager, make senior manager. Okay, now I want to become partner. Okay, well, what's the next thing, right? And so what are the clients I want to work with? Who are those clients? What are the potential other roles within the firm that you want to potentially pursue and look to in the future? So those types of things still motivate you and drive you every day. But at the end of the day, it is that kind of working strongly with our people and having those opportunities to help your clients succeed.
Great. And so if you were to give advice to your younger 20-year-old self, or another 20-year-old who's next to you, what would be the key advice that you'd give?
So you can never have too much education. That's the first thing, right? And so I think if you have a passion for accounting or finance and you want to pursue your designation, you should. You should certainly do that. The second thing would be, and I think that there's lots of opportunities now to get your CPA outside of a firm, right? And I think that some of the learning and some of the professional environment that you get by being in a firm, I think if you talk to people who have gone through that process, they would highly recommend it. And so I'm a bit biased from that perspective as well. I think
little self-advertising.
Yeah, exactly, right? I just think that you hang out with your peers who are in such a professional environment. Everyone who works in these firms has a university degree, right? And there's not that many locations, industries where that's the case. So the learning is constant. The great ideas that are going back and forth are constant, and the professional environment that you're working in is, to me, is second to none. So that, as a 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old is a great environment in terms of getting training and really establishing your professional identity. And then I think the one thing that, and I can't remember if I read it somewhere or if it was a client that told me this, but they said, listen to every idea that comes up when you're talking to your clients, when you're talking to other people, in that professional environment. Because even if one of the ideas out of 5 is good, then it was worth listening to all 5 to get to the one good one. And it's really true, right? Sometimes you're going to be told a lot of stuff that you probably already do know. But then there's going to be those little nuggets in there that are really, really useful and really helpful, and will be, sometimes can be a career changer, right? In terms of what you want to do. So keeping your ear to the ground and really listening to your managers and the people that you work with. I wish that I probably retained more advice that I got over those years, but I guess the 1 in 5 listening rule works as well. So.
Yeah, the good stuff will stick.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. No, thanks a lot, Chris, for taking part in this interview. I hope the audience got a lot of value out of it, as much as I did. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Cheers.
No problem. Take care. So thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please check out other episodes, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date for the future episodes.
Also, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, whichever is applicable to you. To see past episodes, you can go to oldmandan.com/podcasts. Also, you can sign up to my weekly newsletter on my blog, oldmandan.com/newsletter. You can stay up to date with future podcast episodes that way, and included in the newsletter are my book reviews I write, my weekly article related to the domain of self-development systems, as well as 7 things I learned throughout the week on being healthy, wealthy, and wise. Finally, special thanks to icons8.com for allowing me to use their music, Tiny People, on the podcast. Great. I will see you all next time. Take care.